Hello, everyone. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're dialing in from. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm Neha Bansal. I'm a product manager at Google. Specifically, I lead the Google Analytics team, Google Intelligence team within Google Analytics. Um, so, I recently finished about more than 2 years at Google, and I have been thinking that what did I learn in the 2.5 years I've spent at Google? And my experience has been fantastic. So I decided to put down some of my learnings in this presentation and share it with you all. Keep in mind as we go through this that not everything would be like, oh wow, this is new, but I'm hoping there would be some things that you would find interesting. So even if there is like maybe two things that you take away and it makes you think, I would consider it a success. Okay, let's dive in. We'll go through my learnings today, and then at the end, I'll try to have about 5 to 10 minutes for questions. Cool. So just to structure my presentation, I have structured it in terms of the stages of product development. Obviously, everyone uses different terminology to define these stages. I have defined like this, and I'll go through it quickly just in case someone does not know what each stage means. So the first stage is research. Here I'm referring to the broad research involving UX research, market analysis, anything and everything that you would do before you feel ready to undertake a particular project. So that's research. Second step of product development I'm referring to is PRD plus PM mocks. So at Google, a PRD stands for Product Requirement Document, which is basically the deliverable of a PM. It's a Word doc. It's a doc that we write describing exactly what we want to be built and why and how it's going to impact the business. And then PM mocks is basically dirty mocks that I, as a product manager, make as part of my vision and the PRD. The next stage is design. Here I'm referring to UX design, and I'm highly influenced by the fact that I primarily work on software. So it's mostly UX design, which is consumer facing. The next is development. Development is the core part of product development for me, which is the whole engineering time spent on the feature. So which basically includes coding and yeah, the entire coding aspect. Then the next stage is bug bash. Bug bash is the term that we use to define time we spend to break whatever we've built, right? So we basically get together as a team and then try to pull things apart. The stage 6 is the launch. So I'm referring to the pre-launch, which is alpha, beta, and also the full launch. Typically for software development, the launch is a staged launch whereby you roll out slowly. So that's what alpha beta is, when it's very early, and then a full launch is where it's publicly available. And the last stage is listen, measure, and improve. So this is when after you launch, you take the steps to improve the product. Cool. Let's jump into the first one, research. So again, as I said before, I'm only writing things that I found interesting and interesting, right? I'm not going to touch on basics of what is research and stuff like that. Okay, cool. So first step is unpeeling the onion during user interviews. I realized sitting through a lot of UX research interviews was that it is important to keep asking why every time a user brings up an issue with your feature or a pain point that they are talking about, to really hone in on the exact pain point instead of just knowing what are they finding troublesome to understand, right? So the technique for doing that is to ask question why 5 times, right? So that was very, very insightful for me, and I realized that the whole research becomes absolutely like very, very effective when you help the user really uncover what is the pain point and not just what they want, right? Because for example, you will have users tell you that, hey, I want to have a search bar in this particular feature, but then the question is like, why do you want a search bar, right? And you have to keep asking why 5 times instead of just building a search bar because they want it. Okay, the next one, talking to your customer support team. So in the beginning, we were very focused on just doing external or user research, where we would just talk to external users. But very soon I identified that talking to my customer support team, who are at the front line with the users, was also very, very valuable, primarily because they are getting the heat from the customers day in and day out. So they, because of their experience, they were able to give us a very solid summary of what was going on and what the users were having problems with. And this is obviously applicable for features that have existed before and you're working on revamping it, let's say. Third thing was identifying your target users for every pain point you're solving. Now, often what happens is as product managers, if we have this mindset that whether our product is a B2B product or a B2C product, right? Based on that, we have a bias on whom should we talk to, whether we just talk to businesses or consumers. But I think it has to break down to every feature level, especially for complex products like mine, like Google Analytics, that is used by both businesses and consumers. So I learned early on that it was important to identify whom exactly are we building this for. Because even within businesses, you could categorize businesses into so many different types. Like, obviously SMB and large businesses is a very obvious category, but you could go even beyond that in terms of the verticals. Are we talking about automobiles, or are we talking about the internet industry, or are we talking about just mom and pop shops? Like, it could vary a lot. So therefore it was highly effective to know whom are you going to build this feature for, and then talk to that particular target segment, and then go on from there to do your research. Cool. The next, some of the learnings on the PRD creation stage. In my first project, I spent a lot of time perfecting my PRD and before discussing it with my engine design teams. And I realized that when we went into the meeting to review the PRD, they totally tore it apart. And that's when it was my learning that, okay, I don't have to spend like, 3-4 weeks writing down my PRD and making it perfect. It's and this helped me in two ways. One, when I just spent like I then started spending only 1 week to write a PRD, so it made me like relatively faster and compress the time I spent on doing it. So and then I would go into a meeting with engine and design and other teammates, and we would totally like discuss and get a lot of feedback, and then I was able to iterate on that feedback much sooner instead of doing it at the end of 4 weeks, right? That was one. Second big benefit of doing this was other team members feel more involved in the process of creating the PRD and, in fact, the entire feature, right? They feel like they are being consulted way early on, which helps you build trust with your teammates. Nobody likes to be told what to do, right? So yeah, people loved it when I involved them from the beginning. The next thing was about success metrics in the PRD. Usually, a lot of PMs I've worked with, I've seen that success metrics sometimes comes as an afterthought, whereby you would maybe just mention it in the PRD briefly, but not follow through it completely. I would make sure that I learned early on that it's important to define your success metrics very, very clearly and be highly specific, as much as specific as possible. This helped us a lot because we were able to make very informed decisions. So whenever we had to make tougher decisions, we would think of what's our North Star, and our decisions would be aligned to our North Star. So that helped us make the right choices. And secondly, because we had our success metrics very well defined, after the development was complete, it was easy for Eng to implement the tracking in a very clear way. And thus, that also helped us make a case down the line for whether the feature was successful. And even when people went up for their performance reviews, it helped them have very clear metrics to make a case for their own ratings. So overall, having success metrics defined very clearly helped us in making sure that our feature was we were making the right decisions, and also make sure that people were getting rewarded well for their hard work. So, then the final thing here is about dirty mocks. So I cannot emphasize enough on how important it is to, as a PM, to make sure that you sketch what you want, draw out what you want to be built. Now, and the primary reason for doing that is because humans are visual. Most tech companies, when PMs write the PRD or the BRD, whatever they call it, it is a Word document. So sometimes it's very hard to read the whole document and be on the same page with the product manager. So therefore, I think it's a PM's job to make sure that you have sketched things out for your team member to be able to see what you are seeing in your mind, right? And I make dirty mocks by using simple Google Slides or PowerPoint presentations. That's it, nothing fancy, because that helps you save time. Now, one more thing I would like to just say is that keep in mind, this is not your way of telling the designers what to do. And that's a good segue into my next topic, which is design. On the design stage, always give designers a problem, not a solution. Early on, as you already heard, I'm a fan of drawing out my ideas. I started doing that a lot, and I would give my designers like, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking," and sometimes I pushed very heavily on that. And that's when one of the designers, we had a one-on-one chat, and she told me that, Neha, it seems like you're trying to push your solutions to us. And then I was like, yeah, isn't that great that I'm telling you what needs to be done? Wouldn't you be happy that half of your work is done? And she was like, no, not at all. Basically, I want a problem to be solved. So as a PM, your job is to just explain the problem to me well, and then I want to go away and then think of what are all the possible solutions, and then we brainstorm on those design solutions together. And that made sense to me. I realized that yes, even I don't like to be told what exactly to do, right? So yeah, that's why I'm just trying to draw the line that you should have your dirty PM marks to just communicate the vision, but obviously that's not the solution, and make sure that is established well with the team. The next point is don't be shy to get your hands dirty. I have, I learned from experience that often there will be times when you will want to be in the weeds as much as possible. So when it came to design, I made sure that if I needed to train myself, I did that very actively. If my design team was underfunded, I helped them out as much as I could, be it in terms of research required, or even in terms of getting UX testing done. After the designs are ready, we test our designs with users to get early feedback. So don't be shy to do that. Instead of categorizing work like, okay, if this is UX design work, only they will do it. Step in as and when your team needs help. Um, then the final thing is influencing through actions. This was one of my very important takeaways. I realized that early on, when we, just to give you an example, when we did not have funding for UX design, this was like my first quarter at Google, I decided to learn all the design tools like Sketch and InVision myself. And I started using the tools to unblock Eng, basically build what was needed using the design tools and then give it to Eng for development. It went on really well for about 2 quarters. And at that point, I also made sure that I involved the designers from from my larger team to give me feedback on my designs. So it was a collaborative process. Nobody was officially on my team, but they were helping me just through office hours. Now, at the end of 2 quarters, when the design director saw that, okay, things are actually moving at a good pace and things will continue to move, whether I staff a designer or not. So then I was able to actually get a designer on the team. And that's when I realized that, I had actually influenced her through my actions to staff, to fund my project through with a designer, right? By showing her that things will still continue, nothing's going to stop. And that made me realize that there are multiple ways of influencing. You can influence people top to down through creating pressure on the leadership, etc., or you can influence people through your actions. And I think the latter one worked well for me. Okay, next stage, development, launching fast. So often as PMs, you fall in love with your product and you want the first version that you send to the market to be the perfect thing possible, right? Don't do that. You want to launch fast and trim off as many features as possible from your own dream plan, right? The reason for doing that is you can get feedback early on from the market, and that will help you support your next set of decisions that you're making and thus move faster. And yeah, I know it's a well-known fact, but it was super helpful for me to see it in action during my last 2 years. Next thing is delegating project management to someone else. So often people say that as part of a product manager's job description, you are supposed to do project management as well, which is absolutely true. But very early on, I realized that project management takes a lot of time from your day-to-day time core work. So I found it helpful to lean on my engineering counterparts to handle the project management aspect. because really you need project management when the whole development is happening, which is the longest chunk, even time wise, usually. So my eng lead was able to step up and do lead the entire project management. Of course, I made sure that I'm there during the one-on-one weekly meetings to make sure I'm aware of what's going on. But her taking the lead helped me step back and use my time for other things that mattered, like setting the strategy or vision, planning for next quarter, or doing more user interviews, stuff like that. It I also learned as an after effect that uh, enabling my Angelique to lead the project helped her also make a case for leadership in her next performance review. So that was fantastic because it was a win-win situation for both me and her, right? So see, always try to see if your other folks on your team are willing to do project management, and if you can delegate that, then that would be helpful for you to free up your time. Cool. Bug bashes. So bug bashes are like my favorite part of my days, because you get to, I always bring in some sweets and snacks for my team, and we all sit together and try to break apart the thing that we built. Usually, so two important takeaways for me after my first few bug bashes were, one was inviting users who speak different languages. Of course, that depends on whether your product is available in multiple languages. At Google, every product is more or less available in different languages. So it's important that we invite people who speak different languages so that we can identify internationalization bugs early on. There have been cases, believe me, when I didn't do that in the first launch, where someone posted on Twitter that, hey, this is, look what a bad translation Google has done. And that was my feature. And I was sure and that was my lesson, why it's important to invite different people. And the second thing is inviting people outside the core team. Even as developers and PMs, herd mentality is real. So if you do bug bash with the same team that has been thinking about this feature for like months, it's going to be very hard to really identify issues. So therefore, it is important that you identify random people who probably have no relationship with this feature as part of your bug bash, because they will bring in some fresh perspective. Cool. Sorry about that. Yeah. So next is the alpha, beta, and full launch. So one interesting thing here was that when it comes to alpha or beta launches, usually the structure of it varies. So for my first feature at Google, for me, the alpha launch, really, there was no beta launch, really. It was just alpha and then full launch. And alpha was like rolling out to about 5%. And then we scaled it up slowly to 10%, then 50, and then 100, right? And then for the next feature, I knew it was a very, very high risk feature, but I was super confused that, wait, I can't just roll out this feature to 5% of users I don't even know, like just put a percentage number and roll it out. So that's when I sought guidance from other PMs, and I learned that, oh, there's another way of doing launches whereby you create a closed list of users first. So for high risk features. So that made me realize that, okay, you have to plan for the structure of the alpha launch based on different types of features. So if it's a very high risk feature, you would plan a closed list of users who are probably under NDA with your company, and then you would roll out to them, get feedback from them, and then slowly do a full launch. So that was an interesting learning. And the second thing was, always be ready to roll back. Super, super important. There have been times when we have rolled out, let's say, a particular feature, we had zero idea that something else would break because of that. So having the entire infrastructure to do rollbacks proactively has been super helpful. So next is, yeah, so once you have rolled out your feature, this is the final stage where you are listening to feedback from your users, you're measuring the performance of the feature that you launched, and also helping improve it. First thing, it's you have to be brave to take in real feedback. So something that you have worked on for months and you rolled out, I feel like initially I had developed this blindness to negative feedback, because you just think that, oh, what we built is awesome, and that's when you have to be very humble and dial back and just listen to feedback, because otherwise people will not tell you the bad things. Second thing was about, if things go south, be the first one to say it. There will be failures as well. So there have been situations where things I launched did not succeed, and it is important to acknowledge that openly with among the team members, and make sure you're the first one to say it and just own it, that hey, I think this is where we went wrong and this is what exactly happened, so that nobody is just, if you don't talk about it, it just becomes more suffocating within the team to just say it and then come up with a plan of how we're going to fix things. And speaking of fixing things, that's the last point, which is identifying the low hanging fruits for improvement. So invest your time in thinking, what is it that I can just quickly change and help address the problem that, why the feature is not improving. Just to give you an example, I launched this feature called Custom Insights last year. And when we launched the feature, we had worked on it for 6 months, and the adoption was not very rapid. And luckily, I was expecting that's going to happen. And what we did was, subsequently we launched a supporting feature which called Suggested Custom Insights, whereby we just recommended people, we gave suggestions on what are the type of customizations for insights they could do. And that was a feature where you just had to do one click and hit setup, and your custom insights would be set up. And that just the number of custom insights set up grew by like 10x within a month. And that's when the focus on identifying the low hanging fruits was really helpful. Cool. Let me do a time check. Oh, we just have 8 minutes left. We are on the final slide. So in terms of this is about people. I know it wasn't part of the 7 stages of development, but I do want to talk about quickly. First is knowing your people's goals and how you can help them succeed. It has been phenomenally important for in my career so far to know that each member of your team, what is that they want in their careers to succeed. So having a knowledge about that and a deep understanding of that will help you plan well in a way that everybody is successful as part of your project or your role. And the way you do that is obviously by having one-on-ones with people themselves, and also having regular interactions with their managers to understand their career goals and perspectives. Second thing is doing what is right for the product, but also for the people. So just quickly, I often have had, sometimes what is right for the product, whatever roadmap you have, may not be exactly what one engineer on your team wants to work on. So I have been in situations where I will allocate about 30% of my projects to projects that people want to work on, and about 70% on what is exactly needed by the product for its success. That has helped me attain the balance whereby people want to be in my team because they are able to do things that they enjoy and work and want to do. And also, obviously, the product is doing well. Cool. That's pretty much it from my side. Thank you, everyone. I will now open for questions.
Thank you so much, Neha. So we did get a couple of questions throughout the presentation, and feel free to unmute yourself and chime in for whatever questions you'd have for Neha. I'll go ahead and read the first one of the questions I had. Someone had from the slide where you were talking about project management and how product managers, that there's a level of project management in the role, and they want to know what is project management in your case.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my case, once we have defined what exactly needs to be built, we set out a timeline that what are some of our milestones that need to be that we need to achieve from a development perspective, right? Because obviously, so we just break the development into different milestones, and then you are working closely with eng leads to ensure that they meet those milestones. And that means understanding that, okay, are they facing any roadblocks on a weekly basis? And if there are any roadblocks, how do we resolve those roadblocks so that they can keep moving ahead? So that's the entire project management side. I see another question. What do you call a project? I am just referring to any feature development or any particular, anything that you as a PM are working on as one project, so that you can, so that it's a slightly better defined thing. I'm just referring to that as project. It could be any feature or, yeah, anything that you're working on.
I might have a question if you don't mind. First thing first, great presentation. Thank you so much. These are all very great insights. Any thoughts on your end around, driving roadmaps where the roadmap is actually coupled with another PMs, or when you have to, basically when the advancement of your feature or product is kind of depending also of other PMs progress. Any thoughts or learnings on that front?
Yeah, absolutely. I've been dealing with that very recently. I would say two things, two important things that come to my mind. One is start early. When you know that this is going to touch other product areas, start way early, because that will help you, give you the time needed to get on the same page with the other product managers, right? People, it's very, people are very different, right, from each other. So it's hard to get someone to just agree instantly. So give yourself enough time. Second thing I would say is understand what is it in for the other person as well. Sometimes we just have our own agenda, and then we keep harping at that, and we think that, hey, this is the best decision for the company, why wouldn't you do it, why wouldn't you collaborate with me? But you have to really break it down to understand, okay, what are, is this project aligned with the uh, more objectives, goals of the other person as well or not, right?
Thank you so much. That's great.
Cool. Any other questions?
I have a question, if you hear me.
Yeah, we can. Go ahead.
This is Arthur. I'm a product manager at User Guiding. We're a small onboarding tool. So I'd like to ask you, how would you define the PM's role in the solution space? Because once we identify the rules and create some sort of product PRD, then we hand it to the designer, but we try to avoid mentioning any solutions there. We try to state the problems very clearly. But then how do you discuss the solution with the designer? Do you get into sessions with them, or how do you involve them in this particular phase?
Sure. So once I have the PRDs ready and my PM mocks as well, I meet with my designer one-on-one and explain to her, what's the objective of the entire project, why we are doing this, and then what are the pain points we're trying to solve. And then we let them, let her or them take about like 2 weeks or so, whatever they need to go back and think about the problem. And then usually designers at Google schedule, set up workshops whereby the entire team, not just PM and designer, but including Eng or sales or whoever is available, we meet together and then we brainstorm around the issue. So we have design workshops whereby we break down the problem into smaller pieces and then think of possible solutions. We also do wireframing by the end of the workshop. And then once we have those wireframes, that's when again the designers, come together to think of what would those designs actually look like. And then once they have a couple of designs ready, and they bring it to the team, and then we again review it together as a team, and then iterate on that from there. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and then we can go ahead and wrap it up. Someone wants to chime in, or we can grab one of them for one of the questions from the chat. Someone said metrics, please. Let's see. Well, what is your process to decide what the right metric to record is? You can go with that one.
Yeah. I feel like saying a lot of arguments, a lot of discussion and heated discussions. Generally, that's been the process. I remember me and my team just getting in a room and fighting it out, like what should the right metric be. Honestly, in terms of framework, I don't use a framework so far, but I do try to use create metrics which can be tracked easily. So there are sometimes metrics which are very fluffy and they're just directional, but they cannot be measured exactly. So I try to stay away from that because that always creates more complications down the road. That's definitely one thing I would say. They try to choose metrics that you can track. And then the other thing is choosing metrics that aligns with your overall company's North Star as well. Like if the company North Star is going left, don't make sure your metric is not taking you right. That will help. That'll make it difficult for you to convince leadership for any of your efforts. So that would just be another pillar of framework for that matter. Yeah.